They say the first time you bleed in public, something inside you dies. Not your body, your reputation, your power. Everything you built in the shadows comes crashing down the second that blood hits the floor and everyone sees you're just flesh like them. Loss found that out on a Tuesday, in the cafeteria, during second lunch period when the whole damn school was watching. Let me take you back to how it started, not the slap. Before that. Because nothing happens in a vacuum when you're running product through middle school hallways like it's the real streets. Every move has consequences. Every shortcut has a price. Loss and Jay weren't just brothers. They were an operation. Loss handled the strategy, the distribution network, the relationships with the high school suppliers who got their product from the real players in East LA. He was 13 but thought like he was 30. Every conversation was calculated. Every relationship was leverage. He kept notebooks with names, debts, territories mapped out like a general planning a campaign. Jay was the enforcer, 11 years old with the heart of a killer and the impulse control of a hand grenade. Where Loss was ice, Jay was fire. Where Loss planned, Jay destroyed. But that's what made them perfect, the brain and the muscle, Ghost and Tommy. You couldn't have one without the other. They'd been moving product for 6 months. Not drugs, not yet. That comes later when you're older and more stupid. No, they controlled the middle school essentials. Stolen phones, vape pens from the gas station on 4th Street, answers to tests sold to desperate kids whose parents would beat them for another C. Counterfeit hall passes that got you out of class. Even some weed from time to time when the high schoolers had extra and needed the younger kids to move it. Small time? Maybe. But in middle school, this was an empire. And Loss ran it with precision that would make a cartel accountant weep with pride. The Mangananzo family was different. They weren't kids playing gangster. They were actual family to the real Mangananzo operation that controlled 3 neighborhoods in East LA. Mano Reyes was a 7th grader, yeah. But his uncle was doing 15 years in Pelican Bay, and his cousin was a shot caller for MS-13. When Marco moved through school, people stepped aside not because he was tough, but because crossing him meant crossing people who'd done actual bodies. Loss knew this. Loss knew everything. That's why when Marco's crew wanted to buy product from him instead of going through their family's suppliers, Loss saw opportunity. A partnership with the Mangananzo name meant protection, meant expansion, meant nobody would dare touch their operation. But it also meant walking a tightrope over hell. The deal was simple. Loss would supply Marco's crew with vape pens and test answers, premium product, student discounts, weekly delivery every Monday during PE when the teachers were too busy watching kids play dodgeball to notice 2 groups meeting under the bleachers. It worked for 3 weeks. Then came the snow. East LA doesn't get snow, never. But that January, something in the atmosphere shifted, and one morning everyone woke up to 2 inches of powder covering streets that hadn't seen frozen water since the Ice Age. School stayed open because LA doesn't have snow days in the budget, but everything felt different. Off. Like the universe was warning us that normal rules didn't apply anymore. Loss and Jay walked to school that morning through snow that crunched under their Jordans. Jay was hyped, throwing snowballs at stop signs and laughing. Loss was quiet, always quiet, watching, thinking. "You see Mano's text last night?" Jay asked, breath turning to fog in the cold air. Loss nodded once. Marco had messaged asking to move the meetup from Monday to today, said his crew needed product before the weekend. Loss had agreed because you don't say no to the Mangananzo name without good reason, but something felt wrong. Loss couldn't explain it, just instinct. The kind of feeling you get right before everything goes sideways. They'd prepared the product. 15 vape pens in a Nike backpack, 4 different test answer keys for upcoming exams. Loss had personally verified the count 3 times because he never shorted anyone. That was street economics, 101. You short someone, you lose trust. You lose trust. You lose everything. Second lunch period. The cafeteria was chaos like always. 300 kids crammed into a space meant for 200. The smell of institutional pizza and teenage anxiety hanging thick in the air. Loss and Jay sat at their usual table in the corner. Neutral territory where they could see everyone and everyone could see them. That was important. Visibility. Let people know you're present. Let them see you're in control. Marco came through the double doors with 4 of his guys. 7th and 8th graders, all wearing red somewhere on their clothes. The Mangananzo color. Marco was tall for 7th grade, already pushing 5'8", with slicked back hair and a gold tooth that caught the fluorescent light when he smiled. But he wasn't smiling today. He walked straight to Loss and Jay's table. Didn't ask permission, just sat down across from Loss while his crew stood behind him like sentries. "We got a problem," Marco said. Loss looked up from his lunch tray. Didn't blink. Didn't react. Just waited. Let Marco talk. Information is power, and people always tell you more when you stay quiet. "Counted the product from last week," Marco continued. "Came up short. 2 pens missing." Jay's body tensed next to Loss. Loss could feel his little brother's energy shifting, getting ready to explode. Loss put one hand on Jay's knee under the table, a silent message. "Not yet." "Count was exact," Loss said, calm, flat, like he was discussing the weather. 15 pens. Same as always. Marco leaned forward. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying the count was exact." The cafeteria had started to notice the conversation. Kids at nearby tables stopped eating, started watching. In middle school, drama spreads like wildfire, and everyone can smell smoke. "See, that's the problem with you, Loss," Marco said, voice rising just enough for those around them to hear. "You think you're smart. You think you run shit. But you're just a punk kid, playing dress-up in your daddy's clothes. Where is your daddy, by the way? Oh, that's right. He ain't around, is he?" Jay moved to stand up. Loss's hand gripped his knee harder. "Stay down." "The count was exact," Loss repeated. "If your guys lost product after taking delivery, that's on you. I fulfilled my end." Marco smiled then, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for an excuse. "Nah, see, here's what's really on me. It happened so fast most people missed it." Marco's hand flashed across the table and caught Loss across the face. Open palm. The crack echoed through the cafeteria like a gunshot. Loss's head snapped to the side. His Dodgers hat flew off, and when he turned back, there was blood. Not a lot. Just a thin line from where Marco's ring had caught his cheek. But in that moment, in front of 300 witnesses, that single drop of blood was everything. Loss had never been touched, never been challenged, never bled where anyone could see. His entire reputation was built on being untouchable, the smartest guy in the room who never lost control. And now everyone was watching him bleed. The cafeteria went silent, that terrible silence that comes right before chaos. Every eye was on Loss, waiting to see what the great Loss would do. Would he fight? Would he run? Would he prove he was everything they thought he was, or just another kid who got too big for his own good? Loss stared at Marco. His face was completely blank. No anger, no fear, nothing. Like someone had unplugged his emotions and he was running on something deeper than feeling. Jay was shaking next to him. Loss could feel it. His little brother was a bomb with a lit fuse. "Apologize," Marco said, "for shorting me, for lying, for thinking you could play in this world without paying respect." Loss picked up his hat, wiped the blood from his cheek with his thumb, looked at the red smear on his skin like he was studying something under a microscope. Then he stood up. Slowly, everyone leaned in. This was it. This was where Los would... He walked away, just turned and walked straight out of the cafeteria, didn't say a word, didn't look back. Jay stared after him for a moment, confused. Then he grabbed their bags and followed, shooting Marco a look that promised violence. But promises don't mean shit when your leader just got slapped like a child and took it. Marco laughed. His crew laughed. And within 30 seconds, the entire cafeteria was buzzing with the news. Los got slapped. Los bled. Los walked away. The king was dead. Long live the king. I found them in the bathroom on C Hall. The one with the broken lock that nobody uses because it smells like death and regret. Los was standing at the sink, staring at his reflection. The blood had stopped, but the cut was still there. Evidence. Jay was pacing like a caged animal. We need to move now. I'll get Miguel and Flaco, and we'll catch that motherfucker after 6th period, and I'll beat him so bad his own mother won't... No. One word. Quiet. Absolute. Jay spun on him. What do you mean, no? He disrespected you. He disrespected us. Everyone saw it. Every single person in this school now thinks... I know what they think, Los said, still staring at himself. That's the problem. They think, but they don't know. Then let's show them. Let me put hands on this fool and what? You jump him after class. Everyone sees it coming. His boys back him up. It becomes a brawl. Teachers get involved. Cops get called. And we end up suspended, or worse. Then we can't operate. Then we actually lose. Los turned to face his brother. His eyes were different now, colder than I'd ever seen them, like something had crystallized in that moment of humiliation, something harder and meaner than before. Marco thinks he won, Los said. He thinks slapping me in public makes him the big man. But what he really did was sign his own death warrant. Jay stopped pacing. Talk to me. We're gonna hurt him. Not just beat him, hurt him. The kind of hurt that lives in his head forever. But we do it right. We do it so everyone sees and everyone knows. You don't touch loss and live to smile about it. Over the next 4 hours, Los planned it with the precision of a military operation. He used the rest of lunch and study hall to make calls. Not on his phone. He wasn't stupid. Borrowed phones from kids who owed him favors. Made it untraceable. By 6th period, the pieces were in place. Miguel and Flaco, 2 8th graders from Los's crew who'd been with them since elementary school. David Chen, a 7th grader who owed Los for getting his older sister's stolen laptop back. And Jay, of course. Always Jay. The basketball courts behind school were covered in snow. Usually they'd be packed after last bell with kids playing pickup games or just hanging out. But the cold had kept most people inside or sent them straight home. Los was counting on that. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Jay would find Marco, challenge him, talk shit loud enough that Marco's pride wouldn't let him walk away, lure him to the courts for a fair one. Meanwhile, Los and the others would intercept Marco's backup, separate them, isolate him. Chess, not checkers. At 3:15, Jay found Marco at his locker. There were people around. Witnesses. Perfect. Yo, Mano. Jay's voice carried down the hallway. Heard you like putting your hands on people. Marco turned, surprised but not worried. Jay was smaller, younger, no threat. Your brother send you to apologize for him? Marco grinned. Nah. I'm here to tell you to meet me at the courts. You and me. Fair fight. Unless you only got heart when someone ain't looking. Marco's crew started laughing. Little man got a death wish, one of them said. But Marco's smile faded. This was a direct challenge, in front of people. If he backed down, he'd look weak. The same rules that destroyed Los were now being used against him. Aight, Marco said. Courts, 5 minutes. I'm going to teach you the same lesson I taught your bitch brother. Jay smiled. Not a nice smile. The kind of smile that says, I know something you don't. We'll see. At 3:20, Marco walked toward the basketball courts with 3 of his boys. The snow was still falling, light flakes that melted on contact but made everything look clean, peaceful, like the world was trying to hide what was about to happen. Jay was already there, standing center court, alone. Orange jacket bright against the white ground. "Where's the rest of your crew?" Marco asked, looking around. Suspicious, but not enough. Never enough. "Told you. Fair one. Me and you." Marco nodded to his boys. They spread out around the court, blocking exits. Standard procedure. What Marco didn't see was Los in the hallway behind the locker room. Didn't see Miguel and Flaco and David waiting by the door. Didn't understand that the moment his backup had separated from him to surround the court, they'd sealed their fate. It happened simultaneously. Los kicked open the locker room door just as Marco's first guy walked past. Miguel grabbed him from behind, hand over mouth, dragged him inside. The second guy turned at the sound and Flaco hit him with a combination that would make a boxer proud. Down in 3 seconds. The third tried to run, and David tackled him into the snow. Clean, efficient, quiet. Out on the court, Marco was focused on Jay. Didn't hear his crew getting neutralized. Didn't see Los and the others dragging his boys into the locker room and using jump ropes and duct tape from the PE equipment closet to make sure they stayed put. "You got a big mouth for a little kid," Marco said, stepping toward Jay. Jay just smiled. "Runs in the family." Marco threw the first punch. Jay slipped it, barely. Marco was bigger, stronger, with longer reach, but Jay had speed, and more importantly, he had rage. 6 hours of watching his brother's blood on display. 6 hours of hearing whispers. 6 hours of swallowing violence like poison. Now he could spit it back out. Jay ducked under Marco's second punch and drove his shoulder into the bigger kid's chest. They went down into the snow. Jay got on top and started swinging. Not technical, not clean, just fury and fists and all the love he had for his brother expressed through knuckles and impact. But Marco was tougher than Jay expected. He bucked Jay off, scrambled to his feet, caught Jay with a punch to the ribs that made something crack. Jay went down hard. Marco kicked him once, twice. "Thought you had heart," he laughed. "You're just like He's exactly like me." Marco froze, turned around. Los was standing at the edge of the court, alone. Gold chain hanging outside his yellow camo hoodie. Dodger's hat pulled low, and in his hand, wrapped around his chain, was a combination lock. The heavy metal kind they use on gym lockers. Marco looked around for his crew. "Yo! Where the fuck?" "They're taking a nap," Los said, walking slowly across the court. Each step deliberate, each word precise. "It's just us now." The fear hit Marco's eyes then, real fear, because he understood suddenly that he wasn't fighting a kid anymore. He was looking at something else, something colder. "Whatever you thinking, don't," Marco said, backing up. "You know who my family is. You know what they'll do." Los stopped 5 feet away. "I do. But here's what you need to know. I don't forget, I don't forgive, and I never lose." Marco tried to run. Los knew he would, was counting on it. Marco made it 3 steps before Los swung the chain. The lock caught Marco behind the knee, bone and metal making a sound that would haunt my nightmares. Marco went down screaming. What happened next? Look, I've seen fights, I've seen beatings. This wasn't that, this was a lesson. Los stood over Marco and methodically, carefully, with the precision of a surgeon and the coldness of an executioner, beat him with that lock, not randomly. Specific places, ribs, shoulders, hands, places that would hurt but not kill, not permanently damage. Los wasn't trying to end Marco's life. He was trying to end his pride. Between each hit, Los spoke, quiet, calm, like a teacher explaining a difficult concept. "This is for the disrespect. Crack. This is for the blood. Crack. This is for thinking you could touch me and walk away. Crack. Jay had gotten up by now, holding his ribs but smiling through the pain. He pulled out his phone, started recording. "Say it," Los said, standing over Marco, who was curled in the snow. "Say what you need to say." Marco was crying. Not ashamed anymore, just pain and fear and understanding that this was the price. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Louder and on your knees." Marco struggled to his knees, snow melting around him, mixing with tears and blood and snot. I'm sorry for disrespecting you. I'm sorry. Who runs this school?" "You do. Say my name." Los runs this school." Los looked at Jay. Jay stopped recording. Los leaned down close to Marco's ear, whispered something nobody else could hear. Marco's face went pale. He nodded frantically. Then Los turned and walked away, stepped over Marco's backup, who were just now struggling free from the locker room, saw their leader in the snow, and understood they'd been outplayed, outmaneuvered, outclassed. Jay sent the video before they even made it off school grounds, sent it to everyone, every group chat, every social media account. By the time the final bell rang at 3:45, 300 kids had seen Mano Reyes on his knees in the snow begging Los for forgiveness. The king was dead. Long live the king. Los and Jay walked home through the snow like nothing had happened. Jay was hyped, talking a mile a minute about the look on Marco's face. Los was quiet. Always quiet. But there was something different in his silence now. Something darker. Like crossing that line from being disrespected to delivering pain had changed something fundamental. "You think he'll come back at us?" Jay asked. Los shook his head once. "Marco won't, but his family will." "How you know?" "Because that's what I'd do." They got home to their apartment. Mom was at work. Third shift at the hospital meant she left at 4 p.m. and came home at 2 a.m. She worked herself to death to keep them fed and clothed, and didn't ask too many questions about how 2 young boys had money for new shoes and chains. Sometimes love means not knowing. Los went straight to his room, started moving money, stashing product, preparing for war because he knew it was coming. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon, because the Mangananzo family didn't forgive humiliation, couldn't afford to. Their reputation was their currency, and Los had just stolen from their vault. At 6:47 p.m., in a house 3 miles away, a man named Ricardo Mangananzo watched a video on his phone, watched his nephew on his knees, watched him beg, watched him bleed. Ricardo was a lieutenant in the real Mangananzo operation, not the kid stuff, the actual cartel that moved weight through East LA like water through pipes. He had bodies under his name, real bodies, adult bodies, and he'd just watched 2 children disrespect his family's name in front of the world. He made a phone call. "We got a problem," he said. 2 kids, brothers. Need to send a message before this spreads." The voice on the other end asked if he was sure. These were middle schoolers. Going after them would bring heat. "I don't care if they're in elementary," Ricardo said. "Nobody puts their hands on a Mangananzo. Nobody makes us bleed. Find them, find their mother, find everyone they love, and teach them what happens when you forget your place." He hung up, opened the video again, watched his nephew beg, and smiled the smile of a man who knows that violence is coming and nothing can stop it. The snow kept falling on East LA that night, covering streets and cars and basketball courts, making everything look clean and new and innocent. But snow melts. It always does. And when it melted, the blood underneath would still be there, fresh and red and screaming for revenge. Los and Jay had won the battle, but the war, the real war, was just beginning. And in this world, in these streets, with these names and this pride and this violence that breeds violence like a virus, nobody wins wars. They just survive them, if they're lucky.